How do you do? It's time for the Rainbow Review. I'm Trevor Allen.
And filling in for Amin Hafezi, I'm Ben Waddell.
We're here to bring you the news from the world of the LGBTQ. Let's get started with our first story here. It's the continuation of the story of Donald Zarda, who is a former skydiving instructor who was fired from his job due to his sexual orientation as being a gay man. He was able to win a lawsuit against the company, but recently under this new administration and Attorney General Jeff Sessions, the Department of Justice has decided to intervene with the case and hear it out and debate it in the Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. They are defending the employer, saying that they have the legal right to discriminate based on sexual orientation. Their defense is that this week, when they did meet in the court, the officials spoke and stated that under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, that companies or businesses cannot discriminate based on sex, but that does not include sexual orientation. Under Obama, a lot of the DOJ has been interfering with a lot of these cases and siding with the LGBT side of these cases, but now under this new administration, that seems to be changing.
In New York this last week, young man Abel Cedeno got arrested for stabbing two of his classmates who were said to be mocking him. This happened on Wednesday. Abel was being mocked and bullied at his school because of his orientation. He is a young gay man. He went to school and complained to them about the mocking and about the physical abuse. The school did nothing to help him. He went to his friends and told them about the physical abuse, and they couldn't help him. So he decided to take matters into his own hands and stabbed two of his classmates for mocking him. Now, interestingly enough, when the police spoke to him, he actually said that most of the mocking was actually being done by other kids besides the two that he stabbed. Police have said that his admission of that might hurt him in his case, but so far, nothing to report on that. The mayor of New York, Bill de Blasio, came out and said that the school community is in mourning right now as they've lost one of their students, and another one is in critical condition. The mayor also said that it is his mission and his office's mission to keep the children safe. So,
the CDC has officially stated that those living with undetectable levels of HIV cannot transmit the virus. This, in the memo that was released by the CDC, they also note that 26,000 gay and bisexual men received an HIV diagnosis in 2015, making up 2/3 of all diagnoses. And this number has been increasing in Hispanic/Latino gay and bisexual communities. But the good news is that 61% of gay and bisexual men have achieved viral suppression.
So they're no longer able to transmit. So it's,
yes. So 61%.
That's amazing.
It's on the upswing. Things are going in a positive direction.
In the hopes that eventually, maybe not a cure, but a suppression to the point that it won't spread any further.
Yeah.
Therefore, not be carried to another generation. That would be amazing. So, a modern-day Rosa Parks story comes to us now out of New York. Two transgender students were on a bus that was headed for their home. The bus driver had started administering a practice where all the boys sat on one side of the bus and all the girls sat on another side of the bus. Already kind of an antiquated practice. But today there was a problem because the two young trans boys decided to sit on the boys' side of the bus. The bus driver knew their names. They both still use their feminine names. And said that you have to sit on the girls' side of the bus. They said, no, we're not going to do that. The bus driver, instead of just writing it off or saying okay, decided to kick them off the bus and call their parents. The superintendent, when he discovered what had happened on the bus, was very embarrassed and immediately apologized. The Superintendent Michael Patton was quoted as saying, "We do not tolerate any form of discrimination against our students. The bus driver will now undergo retraining to become more sensitive on these issues." And they said that this will be fixed in the future. My questions as soon as I read the story was, one, why are the kids being separated by gender on the bus? And then two, the other problem here going down the line, what happens when there's a non-binary, a third gender, something like that, it's like, oh, boys sit over here, girls sit over here, where do I sit? I mean, that's...
Things have to be talked about.
Things have to be updated. Something needs to be figured out before something else happens in that situation. So
Gosh.
Yeah.
Well, over in Indonesia, their parliament is set to pass a bill banning LGBT behaviors from television. This would affect any scripted television appearing that would include whatever is under the umbrella of LGBT behaviors. And it would also impact news, so they couldn't even refer to anything LGBTQ in their news.
Wow.
This ban has a broad support across all parties in Indonesia, and the reasons for their support include that it's against their culture, and that if they don't ban it early, then it may become a lifestyle, and younger generations could be ruined because of it. Being gay in Indonesia is actually legal, except for in the ultra-conservative, excuse me for my pronunciation, Aceh province, where the Human Rights Watch says floggings of the LGBT continue but have moved from public to more private. So they're more secret and hidden at this point.
Well, a little bit of good news. The company Miller Coors, who are the beer makers behind Miller Lite, Coors, and Miller, and all those good beers, has just recently given a donation of $72,000 to the Human Rights Campaign. This is a program called Tap into Change that Miller Coors came up with several years ago. I believe 6 years ago. Basically, the situation is that they have a group of restaurants and bars that agreed to take a small portion of their profits, pool them every year, and then they take that pool and donate it to a worthy LGBTQ cause. The group has been in existence, like I said, 6 years, and they have now donated a total of $175,000, which, if you do the math, you can see a lot of that $175,000 came this year with their donation of $72,000.
Wow.
So that means that group is growing. I would imagine the group of restaurants is growing, group of bars is growing, and that is now a real. I mean, that's a lot of money. That's a driving force for any nonprofit group. That's really great stuff. So, good job, Miller Coors. So
keep it up.
Yeah.
Over in Australia, their army is looking to abandon its gender-inclusive policies just after making headlines for accepting their first non-binary recruit. The junior minister for defense personnel has instructed the department to find out a way to remove the protections that are in place for these non-binary soldiers. The legislation also protects women against gender discrimination. So if this legislation is revoked, that would also mean remove protections for pregnancy and marital status.
Wow.
Yes, and it is reported that this order came about after media inquiries about the first non-binary cadets in the Australian Defence Force Academy. The ADF has currently 2 non-binary cadets and 7 non-binary public servants across the Australian Public Service. Non-binary service members have 0 cost impact on the military.
Wow.
Because they don't have to have the same things as transgender service members.
Yeah, interesting. And all of this, of course, is going on amidst the news we've been reporting here for weeks about Australia and their the vote for whether or not gay marriage is going to be legal. Yeah.
It's things that are going on over there right now.
Hotbed over there in Australia. Yeah. Well, another story actually about fighting same-sex marriage in Texas. The Texas Supreme Court has reached a decision this last week to overturn a former decree, basically looking at the specifics of same-sex marriage. They are mandated by the Supreme Court of the United States to allow same-sex marriage, but what they are now going after is the benefit rights that a same-sex marriage couple might have. Basically saying that while the Supreme Court decision to allow same-sex marriage does allow it, and they can't do anything about that, they feel that there is some gray area in terms of whether or not you receive all the benefits that a opposite-sex marriage would have. So they've gone after that. This is actually all in retaliation specifically to the former mayor of Houston, who is a lesbian, and she actually granted the same-sex couples that worked for the city of Houston, she granted them benefit rights while they worked there, and this is kind of all in a backlash to her doing that. She is no longer the mayor, but still the state, I think, is kind of pushing back on this pretty hard. Currently, the same-sex couples in the state of Houston, they do still have benefits at this time. They're still in place, and the city of Houston is going to appeal the decision. So,
Gosh.
Yeah.
Allie Stanfield, age 17, of Texas County, Missouri, was found dead and her genitals mutilated. This is a trans woman. Stanfield is the 21st trans person found murdered this year. 3 suspects have been arrested: Isis Shower and Andrew Verba, age 18, as well as Brianna Calderas, age 24. Stanfield's body was found near Caldera's mobile home. Verba has admitted to police to having repeatedly stabbed Allie and gouging out her eyes and genitals. Verba also says the other 2 went to Walmart to buy items to burn Stanfield's body, saying that after burning her body, they put her bones in a garbage bag and hid it in a chicken coop near Verba's home. The 3 were charged with first-degree murder, armed criminal action, and abandonment of a corpse. And a 4th suspect, James T. Grigsby, was charged with abandonment of a corpse and tampering with evidence. The family had been searching for Allie since the beginning of the month, and on September 3rd, they found on Verba's Facebook page a message to Shure saying, "Stick to the story and quit talking."
Wow.
It's rough.
That's
And 21 murders, that's this year. And I remember not that long ago, I remember us reading a story, I believe, that was around 16 or something like that.
So it's
increased.
gone up like 5 over the summer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Joe Biden just gave a talk this last week at a gala celebrating LGBTQ activists, where he urged the activists to hold Trump accountable. In his words, they needed to remember that Trump at one point labeled himself as a friend to the LGBTQ community, a notion that actually our own editorialist Susan Frawley mentioned a couple weeks back. She warned that Trump said that he was our friend on the way in, but of course now we can see he is not, and his administration is definitely not. Biden echoed a lot of those same statements at his speech, and then pointed out, as much great work as we've done in the past, we now face some real challenges ahead. This of course is relating to the fact that even though Trump might have come out and said that he is a friend, his administration, his appointments, his repealing of protections has definitely not been friendly to the LGBTQ community. Biden urged all of the people at the event, the gala, to hold him accountable to that and make sure that he knows that he said it and that he can't go back on it. So,
in 2011, California became the first state to adopt guidelines for teaching LGBTI history in K through 12 schools. The state is looking to get 12 new textbooks following these set guidelines, but the Family Coalition, OFC, and Equality California wants the Instructional Quality Commission, the IQC, to reject all but 2 of these textbooks, saying that some of the textbooks completely erase LGBTI involvement in history, while others need changes and additions. The act could bring teachings of LGBTI issues such as persecution during the Holocaust, don't ask, don't tell, and other matters.
interesting.
Yeah, so not too bad. It just needs to fix some books.
It's encouraging to think that it might actually be taught in
Yeah.
schools instead of, I remember it being taught about the Holocaust, but it was more of a side note.
It was not taught in my school about the
Interesting.
No, it was never mentioned.
To me, it was lumped in with artists and other groups that were also killed. Moving now to Cairo, Egypt. 7 people were arrested for promoting sexual deviancy after a photo was discovered of them holding up a rainbow flag at a concert. The concert was for the band Mashru Layla, and they were actually discovered because someone took a picture of them and posted it to Twitter. Kind of interesting that in a region that recently got Twitter a little while back, and Twitter was a big part of why the Arab Spring happened, and now it's being used against the LGBTQ community. The concert they were at, the band Mashru Layla, the lead singer of the band is an openly gay man, and they were there to support him, showing the flag and hoping that he would see it from stage. And now 7 of them, like I said, have been arrested. While being gay is not technically illegal in Egypt, the gay people are often charged as criminals, and the charge is listed as debauchery, immorality, or blasphemy. All of those which apparently are against the law, but also have fairly hazy definitions. And like I said, the person posting the picture to Twitter is the one that got them caught, really. That's actually how it happened. That was the evidence against them. So,
Gosh.
amazing. Yeah. You'd think at a concert you'd be safe. I mean, especially it's a concert where there's an openly gay performer.
Yeah.
You're there to support the person, and it's just the flag. It was just the flag. That's it. So.
Gosh. Well, a recent Stonewall school report from Scotland suggests that 96% of trans students are self-harming, as well as 60% of LGBT students. Stonewall Scotland and the Centre for Family Research at the University of Cambridge looked at experiences of over 400 LGBT pupils in Scotland schools. 48% of LGBT students said that they were bullied for being LGBT, and 70% of trans students were bullied. 60% hear homophobic slurs regularly, 50% for the rest of the UK. Young LGBT students in Scotland have alarming rates of poor mental health. 40% of trans people attempt suicide, and 24% of LGB students also attempt suicide. Jack, age 15, who's going to a faith school in Glasgow, says they were constantly shouted at and had things thrown at them almost every day. Lewis from Lothian says they've been pushed up against walls, had notebooks stolen, textbooks vandalized, received threatening Facebook messages, and sexually explicit threats. Even teachers are reportedly being homophobic and transphobic. Jesse from Lothian says that they are afraid to be open because their teachers are making fun of trans people. 40% of Scottish students are never taught anything about LGBT issues in school. 20% of students have heard about safe sex in relation to same-sex relationships. Earlier this year, the DOE, Department of Education, made sex and relationship education mandatory in all secondary schools, but the government has not clarified if that includes LGBTI education.
Well, for my last story for this week, hopefully we get to go on a bit of a high note here. The country of Pakistan has now changed its laws for ID. The laws previously meant that when you got ID, you had to put your parents' last name on the ID. The problem with that was that for a lot of trans people in the country, their parents have either disowned them or they are not telling their parents because of fear from backlash from the parents. The new law says that you can use your guru's name. Now, specifically, a lot of trans people there have gurus because of a long-standing tradition in Pakistan for a group called Khawaja Sira. Khawaja Sira is a recognized third gender in Pakistan, and that group, when one person is recognized as Khawaja Sira, they leave their parents' home and they move in and stay with a guru, and the guru actually takes care of them and feeds them and acts and becomes their new societal family. And because of that relationship there, they are now making it the law that the IDs can have the guru's name on it instead of the parent's name.
Oh, so, wow.
Yeah, hopefully, and which IDs are a very, very big part of their culture. They need IDs to get a job. They need IDs just for a lot of just normal everyday life things. Including the actual national census. They're saying that the actual last census apparently left off a lot of trans people because since they couldn't get an ID, they couldn't actually enter themselves as part of the census. Hopefully this now will fix that problem. So, but yeah, good news there. Good. In a region that I would initially, my gut level would be worrying for that community there, knowing that a lot of other groups struggle with that area, but it sounds like they're a little more accepting. And I think India, there was something similar too, about there already existing a third gender.
Yeah, they're starting to make steps in their own way, it seems like, even though they might not be the biggest, but they're still decent steps. Stuff. And now to Susan Frawley.
Thank you, Trevor. This week we have an interview with Thomas Hubbard. Are you the director? The director of the Percy Foundation?
President, the
president of the Percy Foundation. So first off, Mr. Hubbard, would you mind telling us just a little bit about yourself before we talk about the Percy Foundation?
Well, by training, I'm a classicist, an ancient historian studying ancient Greece and Rome. I am the Dougherty Professor of Classics at the University of Texas in Austin, where I've been since the late 1980s. And in the last 2 decades, my research has really been focusing mainly on issues of ancient sexuality and gender codes. I'm currently hold a Guggenheim Fellowship researching a book on Greek masculinity and a second book on ancient homosexuality, or pederasty as the Greeks referred to it. I received my doctorate from Yale, but I'm actually originally here from Northern California. I had my master's degree at Berkeley, and prior to that was an undergraduate at Santa Clara University.
Ah, Santa Clara. So are you from, what was your hometown, if I may ask?
Walnut Creek in the
Walnut
Bay
Creek.
Area.
Oh, yeah, okay.
That's where I went to high school. And after I graduated, they promptly closed that school down.
Well, because they couldn't do any better, right? That's the way you got to look at it.
I'd like to think that.
Okay, so thank you so much for giving us some background on you. So what you're here for to talk to us today is a couple of things, but basically, first and foremost, what is the Percy Foundation?
We are an educational nonprofit. We sponsor a lot of things, original scholarly research, conferences, visiting speakers to campuses. We also sponsor collecting archival material, oral histories, interviews with people about their lives and sexual histories that can be useful to researchers. And one of the most important things that we're engaged in, and what we're now headquartering here in Chico, is a program to distribute books and educational materials to prisoners.
And I'm sorry to interrupt. Is that what you would call the Insiders Bookstore Project?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Our headquarters are at 1421 Park Avenue here in town. And although we're not a bookstore open to the public at this point, we are a bookstore that gladly accepts donations of books because these men and women in prison really have access to very little in the way of quality educational and literary material. And you might wonder how this dovetails with our focus on gay rights and gay sexuality, but there are really a huge number of gay, lesbian, trans people in prison where the conditions that they face are not good, face lots of mistreatment by other prisoners and even more so by the prison guards and personnel. Looking at how the criminal justice system treats sexual minority prisoners has really been one of our main focuses of research during the last few years. This is unfortunately something that a lot of the mainstream gay rights groups like the HRC are not interested in touching. It just doesn't mesh with their agenda of trying to present gay people as ordinary, normal, non-scary.
But we're just people too, and so you're going to get all walks of life and diversity in our community, and that's good, the bad. Thinking of the movie, The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. I was like, but
Certainly.
So you distribute educational books and how do they find out about your program?
Often by word of mouth from other prisoners. We started out announcing the program through a couple of newsletters that were oriented to gay prisoners, and it really mushroomed from there. And we get all kinds of people writing into us asking to participate. And of course, we don't discriminate. Although I would say the majority of the prisoners on our list are sexual minority identified, there are many who aren't. But that is useful for our researchers as well, because it's important in researching any minority to have a control group that you can compare it against. The one thing we ask of prisoners, they pay nothing for these books and materials. Those are completely free. We finance the cost of shipping them to the prisoners. But the one thing we ask of them is that they fill out a fairly detailed personality survey and questionnaire, which asks them about a lot of, fairly intimate things in their background, what kind of abuse they may have suffered in childhood, particularly if their crime was something sex-related. We look at the different factors that are involved in that. We ask about their treatment in prison, the facilities that are available to them. There's really a multitude of data that we're getting out of these surveys, which in turn is very useful to our statisticians and researchers in terms of getting a useful idea of why it is that so many GLBTQ people have become enmeshed in the criminal justice system.
Excellent idea to get that kind of data. So I think that I can think of a million uses for it right away. So I'm glad someone's getting this kind of data. So we're almost out of time. So let me ask you quickly. I know that you've got an intern, but does your organization request, or do you need volunteers or donations or both?
Yes, absolutely. We are an all-volunteer organization. Nobody, including me as president, gets paid a thing. We really depend entirely on the goodwill of people who want to contribute to the effort. So yes, we could still use plenty of volunteer help in establishing our new headquarters here in Chico, organizing the books, cataloging books that are donated to us, preparing the packages for shipment to prisoners. And of course, the other thing that we welcome as donations are books themselves, and particularly any books on gay or lesbian themes, because that's not the kind of thing prison libraries are going to stock on their own.
No.
I mean, we're one of the few places where prisoners can get such identity-affirming material. We're going to set up a book donation box right outside of our office at 1421 Park Avenue if people wish to donate books anonymously, or if you want a receipt for tax purposes, and we are IRS certified, you can write the fair market value of the books off of your tax return as an in-kind donation. Just contact us or leave a letter with your donation, and we'll be happy to send you a receipt for that.
Awesome, thank you. And as stated, you can contact the Percy Foundation at 1421 Park Avenue, Suite 100. Is that 100?
Yes.
Okay, 1421 Park Avenue, Suite 100, Chico, California, 95928, or you can visit them on the web at wapercyfoundation.org.
Thank you, Susan. I've been Trevor Allen.
And I've been Ben Waddell.
Take care of yourselves.
Give him the guns.
Take care. It was pointing. I didn't do that.
Take care of yourself.
yourself.
Oh, okay. It's just the point.
I decided. I was last minute. Decided not to point guns.
Give the guns.
I'm just like, And now to Susan Frawley with the editorial.
Oh wait, no, these were in the shot.